11 years ago, nations gathered in Paris to mark one of the most monumental climate treaties ever penned on paper. An agreement that marked 1.5 degrees Celsius of planetary warming as the point of no return and charted the course for 198 countries to begin the work of tackling climate change. Today, it seems little has changed.
Everywhere you look in fire-ravaged LA, scenes of apocalyptic destruction.
In Libya, at least 6,000 are feared dead. Thousands more remain missing after a catastrophic flood in the eastern city of Derna.
Spain says there were more than 1,000 excess heat-related deaths this June.
Climate chaos is upon us, and with it, death and destruction. Yet the political leaders and wielders of capital still cling desperately to the ideologies and economic systems that have dug us deep down in the pit of the climate crisis. The long and destructive legacy of capitalist growth has pushed us to the precipice of planetary disaster. And yet, growth is championed as the panacea to our social, economic, and ecological problems.
We need three things: growth, growth, growth.
Here is where we must intervene. The path forward cannot and should not be growth. For that road only leads to the continued immiseration of billions of people, heightened inequality, and the razing of the natural world. Today and tomorrow and the next day, we must champion degrowth, a politics of less that ultimately brings us more. Today, we'll explore the world of degrowth, what it is, how we can implement it, and why degrowth is crucial for a more just and abundant ecological future. On the topic of degrowth, I need your help. Over this past year, I've transitioned Our Changing Climate to become a viewer-supported endeavor. But right now, I'm making the bare minimum to keep this channel afloat. My monthly income from YouTube is well below what it used to be as I dive into more controversial and leftist topics like this one, and the threat of demonetization only makes that worse. This is where you come in. Patreon supporters are literally the sole reason I'm able to spend weeks researching and editing videos like this one. And really, I just want to put out high quality and engaging stories that examine the climate crisis, capitalist destruction, and what we can do about it. And I want those videos to be free and accessible to everyone. But to do that, I need to make money somehow. And unfortunately, I do have to pay my housing costs and medical bills. So if you have the means to keep this channel afloat, literally just a quarter of the cost of one movie ticket a month, I humbly ask that you support OCC on Patreon using the link in the description to keep the channel alive and keep my videos free for everyone. And when you become a member on Patreon, you get access to all of my videos 1 month early and ad-free. We also have a lovely little Discord community for talking climate and leftist politics, and there's also a trove of over 30 bonus videos and extended content as well. If something else might entice you to become a supporter of Our Changing Climate, please do let me know. Anyways, back to the video. In 2018, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released a report that shook the world. It laid out the consequences of surpassing 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, and they were dire.
Humanity has only a dozen years to mitigate climate change or face global catastrophe.
Now we are well on our way to busting down the door of 1.5 degrees and hurtling towards 2.8 to 3.2 degrees Celsius of planetary warming by the end of the century. Although those numbers may sound small and inconsequential, the effects of 3 degrees Celsius of warming are not. Roughly 30% of endemic species on land and around half of those in the sea could go extinct. Billions of people are predicted to be displaced from their homes by the end of the century if we continue on this path, and climate damages could potentially wipe out 40% of the global economy. Economic chaos is an inevitability as we plunge deeper into the climate crisis. To be clear, the climate crisis is upon us right now, and it's driven by reckless capital accumulation under the ideology of growth. An ideology that has even pervaded the modeling and solutions pathways to mitigate climate change. One that claims that we can continue growing our economy and letting our emissions accumulate and overshoot 1.5 degrees Celsius or even 2 degrees Celsius of warming in the hope that growth will someday, somehow, spur the massive construction of carbon negative technologies to scrape us back down below 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. According to Andreas Malm and Wim Carton in their book Overshoot, out of the 578 climate scenarios included in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's special report on 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, 568 included some amount of overshoot. So just 10 scenarios did not rely on some future scaling up of carbon removal to save us from disaster. Put another way, almost every scenario relies on recklessly overshooting 1.5 degrees or even 2 degrees Celsius of warming, and then someday in the future, hoping that economic growth will help develop and scale currently non-existent carbon-negative technologies to bring us back under 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. Of course, these scenarios rarely mention the various tipping points that could cascade while we march our way to a hotter and hotter planet. The desertification of the Amazon, the collapse of the Atlantic Meridional Ocean Current, or the melting of the Greenland ice sheet, to name a few. All of which could trigger feedback loops that then would warm the planet even further. And we are hurtling towards these overshoot scenarios because we are trapped within the dominance of the growth ideology.
You keep using the word.
I know, I keep saying growth. So what exactly does that mean? Growth, in its very simplest form, can be understood as the material and ideological manifestation of capital accumulation. Or put another way by the authors of The Future of Degrowth, economic growth appears as the ideological, social, and biophysical materialization of capitalist accumulation. But what does that mean exactly? Capitalism, at its core, requires corporations and the economy to grow or die. If H&M isn't churning out a new line of clothes faster than its competitors, it might hemorrhage profit, causing capitalist investors to panic. Because profit is all. Capitalist growth is born out of the foundational cycle of capitalism, or capital accumulation, which invests profit, or money, into commodities to create more money and more profit. This cycle then expands outward into infinity, growing until it crashes headfirst into the walls of a planet with finite resources. Within the last 70 years since World War II, growth has become the dominant ideology of capitalism. We've tied the idea of a growing economy tightly to the concepts of prosperity and innovation.
The U.S. economy is doing well, innovation in the U.S. is doing well, the U.S. formula looks great.
And the crowning metric for understanding and tackling growth is GDP, or gross domestic product, a simple figure that reveals the total monetary value of all goods and services produced, be it in a country or the world. Mainstream economic wisdom tells us that if that number grows, things are going well and we're innovating and marching towards progress, and if it shrinks, things aren't going so well. But GDP is blind to the ramifications of what is produced. As eco-Marxist writer John Bellamy Foster writes, anything that provides value added in accordance with the capitalist valorization process represents growth. So GDP goes up equally when we spend money on food as it does when we spend money on war, fossil fuels, when we level old growth forests, and when we burn the Amazon. As Jason Hickel, author of Less is More, explains,
according to this metric, 1 billion pounds worth of tear gas is valued exactly the same as 1 billion pounds worth of healthcare or affordable housing or something like that. And when it comes to human welfare, clearly one of these is more important than the other.
In essence, our main metric for progress, for growth, puts the same value for tanks and bullets as it does food and water. And it fails to even account for things that don't directly bring profit or value to the economy, like domestic labor, care work, ecological conservation, and emissions reductions. So in this case, growth, and capitalism for that matter, does not equate to innovation or prosperity. It instead devalues what actually enriches our lives and helps us prosper. But of course, that is just one metric, a metric that hints at the insidious nature of growth. Because the truth of the matter is that capitalist growth does not bring the progress and innovation the likes of Keir Starmer.
Growth is the number one priority of this government.
Or Joe Biden.
To be able to get back to work, generating economic growth.
Like to think it does. If we understand growth to be a manifestation of capitalism, and more particularly the accumulation of capital through the cycle of money invested into commodities to make more money, then we can understand that this capitalist growth, when left unchecked, has led to massive inequality and environmental destruction, as value and profit are created from ripping the land apart for fuel and burning it into the atmosphere to power our SUVs and private jets. Even so-called green growth has failed. Despite the fact that we are building renewables at an unprecedented rate, thanks in large part to China, we are still churning out emissions at unprecedented rates. Not to mention, green growth retains the capitalist model of imperial plunder in order to build out a massive energy infrastructure in the imperial core to compensate for our lavish lifestyles. Ultimately, we must keep in mind that growth is a symptom, a manifestation of capitalism. And capitalism is highly undemocratic, and as a result, those that control capital control the course of the economy and control what gets to grow. Something has got to give. We either continue marching down the path of capitalism, of climate change, of reckless resource consumption, and smash into the very real material limits of this world, or we choose a different world. One that's planned, one that chooses a good life for all and a livable planet over the enrichment of the few. Instead of just blindly championing the growth of the economy regardless of what it produces, we need to set social and ecological targets and then work towards achieving those by planning production.
The correct way to think about it is, what are the social and ecological targets we want to hit? We want to improve housing and education and health outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. We want to improve soil quality and reduce emissions. These are the objectives we should set for the economy, and we should plan production around achieving those things.
If scientific report after scientific report urges us to stay well below 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, the most effective and best way to do that is not just to completely dismantle the fossil fuel industry and zero out emissions, but also to shrink the material consumption and production of our global economy so that the hole we are trying to dig ourselves out of is just a little bit smaller. Currently, we are doing the exact opposite. Energy efficiency gains are being blotted out by increased overall production and consumption, led by the likes of AI data centers and the spread of the imperial mode of living across the world. A lifestyle that venerates the gas-guzzling SUV, extreme convenience, the second AC blasting summer home, the private jet, the yacht. Degrowth rebels against this capitalist dream of individual reckless luxury for the few at the cost of the many. So, what exactly is degrowth? To be clear, it is not an unplanned recession or a market crash, nor is it a march back to the Stone Age.
Anyone who says differently is selling something.
The exact definition of degrowth, however, can be hard to pin down. Jason Hickel describes it as
defined as a kind of planned and democratic reduction of less necessary forms of production in rich countries to bring economies back into balance with the living world in a safe, just, and equitable way.
While Roland Ngam explains that degrowth is as much about flourishing as it is about contraction.
We need to degrow from large monocrop productions, and we need to grow regenerative agriculture. We need to degrow excessive amounts of time spent in offices making other people rich. We need to grow valuable quality time with our families. We need to degrow concrete jungles. We need to grow greener, smaller communities.
Personally, I like Timothy Parik's definition of degrowth.
Degrowth is a reduction of production and consumption to lighten ecological footprints, planned democratically in a spirit of social justice and out of concern for well-being.
All of these definitions contain three foundational pillars.
She gave me three.
Reduction, distribution, and reconnection. First is reduction.
Reduce!
A glut of scientific papers, the IPCC, have made it clear that any rapid and successful attempt to pull us back from hurtling past 1.5, 2, or even 3 degrees of warming will require the electrification of everything, the complete abolition of fossil fuels, and a massive build-out of renewable energy to replace them. But the problem is that in our economy obsessed with growth, this transition continues to get harder and harder. We are trying to climb our way out of a massive hole, while hundreds of fossil capitalists use excavators to make that hole even deeper. So yes, renewable energy capacity is at an all-time high, but so too are carbon emissions. Reduction of production and consumption of energy and material resources, then, is crucial to lighten the load of our transition to a zero-carbon world. We must spiral our economic production down in a controlled manner into some form of post-growth economy built on eco-socialist principles. This is the core of degrowth, building a world where we can all live well with less. Whether that be a city with copious amounts of bike lanes and electrified buses and trains in lieu of gas-guzzling cars, communal farms instead of asphalt streets, libraries of everything so that we don't all have to own that one tool or ladder that we only occasionally use. Degrowth does not mean austerity, nor is it the chaotic contraction of a pandemic or a financial crash. It is the planned contraction of production and consumption downwards towards a more intentional ecological economy. This is the reduction of production and consumption to lighten ecological footprints part of the definition. But the key is that this reduction should not and cannot be equally felt, which is where the second pillar of degrowth lies: redistribution. Degrowth envisions the contraction of violent and unnecessary industries and the flourishing of production for use like healthcare, childcare, mental health, electrified public transit, and agroecology. The goal is to lighten our ecological footprints while also healing our communities. This means a global redistribution of wealth on a scale the likes of which we have never seen. It means re-envisioning what life in the imperial core looks like so that everyone, everywhere, especially in imperial peripheral countries that have been plundered for centuries, can not just live, but live well. So yes, we in the United States will probably be driving a lot fewer SUVs or even cars for that matter. But we would be embracing better alternatives and would be doing so that the ruthless cobalt mining operations in the Democratic Republic of Congo need never to exist. And because degrowth means we'll need to produce far less and ultimately work less, it also means a whole lot more free time and leisure to lounge in the park or stroll through the woods. A good life under degrowth will not and should not mean having lots of stuff, but instead having a fulfilling life of time, of leisure, and of enjoyment. Ultimately though, the goal of degrowth is to flatten inequality to a level where the majority of the world is enjoying more and just a small sliver of the world is using less. Because according to Oxfam, right now, a person in the richest 0.1% of the world emits more carbon pollution in a day than someone in the bottom 50% produces all year. Or as David Wallace Wells notes,
the average American refrigerator uses more carbon than the average resident of Nigeria. The average resident of Mali uses only as much carbon as the average British tea kettle.
Perhaps degrowth will mean energy quotas using smart thermostats like some utilities already use during heat waves to spread out grid load, or it could mean expansive public transit, green, dense, free housing, or even a proliferation of plant-based diets. In practice, the degrowth of energy use and consumption of the whole world would look like one of leisure, less work, less waste, more free time, and ultimately less stress. Yes, you won't have your massive Hummer and your guns, but think about all those tasty tomatoes that you can pick from the communal gardens right in front of your house, or the mushrooms you could forage on your way to work.
Mushrooms!
Or all the friends you could hang out with now that you only have to work 20 hours a week at the local community kitchen. And it's here where we arrive at the third pillar of degrowth found in many definitions, a concept of reconnection. Degrowth, if it is to be at all successful, cannot function within a capitalist system. As we've already seen, capitalism is antithetical to degrowth. It shatters our connection with the stuff we produce, alienates us from the natural world, and silos us from our friends and communities. Not to mention, no amount of technology will overcome the chaos and destruction of the market and of capital accumulation. So we need a revolutionary transformation of the very way we produce and distribute goods and services, the very way we interact with the world and the people around us. As John Bellamy Foster argues, no existing technologies by themselves can come anywhere near to solving the climate problem in the required timeline, not to mention addressing the planetary emergency in its entirety, while allowing for the continued unlimited exponential accumulation and maldistribution required by capitalism. What is objectively necessary at this point in human history is therefore a revolutionary transformation in social relations governing production, consumption, and distribution. This means a dramatic shift away from the system of monopoly capital, exploitation, expropriation, waste, and the endless drive to accumulation. Degrowth is one of the puzzle pieces to do just that. It asks the world to contract production and consumption to lighten our ecological footprint in such a way that revolutionizes our relationship with the natural world and each other. Degrowth at its best should push us towards each other and the natural world. Whether that's fewer days a week of work, leading to less emissions and more free time to spend with family and friends, or rewilding half of the planet, encouraging us to break the false binary between humanity and our environments. At its core, a politics of degrowth is asking us to decide what is actually valuable in life. Is it an AI algorithm, or is it spending quality time with your loved ones? Is it grinding away at a job you hate that builds bombs to kill racialized people thousands of miles away? Or is it stewarding the land through agroecological methods and sharing your learnings across borders and languages? Is it producing stuff just to make money, or is it making stuff we actually need? Degrowth asks us to reconnect with our true wants and needs, and not those manufactured by marketing and fake capitalist scarcity. Still, critiques of degrowth have proliferated across the political spectrum. One of the more prevalent is that degrowth means living in caves, that it is a politics of oppression forcing everyone back to the Stone Age. This is often just a bad faith argument and misses the crux of the degrowth messaging. Yes, degrowth means a drastic reduction in energy and material consumption and production for some, like the United States. But within that contraction lies a politics of abundance. This paper reveals that countries with the highest per capita consumers could cut their energy consumption rate by 95% and still live well with a combination of efficiency technologies and alternative lifestyle choices. In addition, they found that a global reduction of energy consumption by 60% is not only feasible, but also could be done in a way that brings a comfortable lifestyle to every single person on this planet. But crucially, the authors explain a 60% of reduction and even a 95% reduction doesn't mean going back to the Stone Age, but instead a contraction back to 1960s global consumption levels. Not just for the US, but for everyone, everywhere. But what about innovation, you might say? That sweet, sweet siren song of growth. No growth in the economy surely means that we won't be able to expand our horizons like capitalism supposedly does. But is capitalism really spurring the most innovation? And more importantly, what is capitalist innovation currently creating, and who is it creating it for? Because right now, the sharpest minds in the world aren't working on solving housing problems or figuring out how we can all live well in a zero-carbon world. Instead, they're honing social media algorithms and AI war technology. In short, innovation under capitalism is not wielded to enrich our lives. That only comes as an occasional symptom of something that's profitable. Instead, innovation is leveraged to extract maximum profit from production. Ultimately, though, degrowth has suffered from a lack of political agenda. Contracting production and consumption, when we're already suffering under the oppressive forces of capitalism, is hard to wrap our heads around. Degrowth, if not carefully explained, can quickly be characterized as austerity, which is no foundation to build a mass movement around. In addition, degrowth does not show us what conditions and tactics we might use to dismantle capitalism. This is why degrowth must work hand in hand with political tendencies like ecosocialism to chart a path forward out of capitalism. If this seems radical, consider the fact that we shut down massive parts of our economy in the face of the COVID-19 crisis. And also consider the fact that we are currently on track to surpass 3 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of the century, which would displace billions of people and trigger countless tipping points. We have no choice but to take drastic action. And while degrowth does a great job of recognizing and critiquing the destruction of capitalism and capitalist growth, it needs a political system to work within, and it can't be capitalism. This political system needs to prioritize the full democratic control of the means of production and an emphasis on the production of goods for use, not for profit and exchange. It needs ecosocialism. Degrowth cannot function without ecosocialism, and ecosocialism cannot work without degrowth. A synthesis of the two creates a steadier path away from capitalism and away from climate chaos. Degrowth under capitalism only leads to tyranny and austerity. Degrowth must come from the bottom up, which is why ecosocialism is essential. It champions a full-scale reconstruction of the economy, not based on profit and ultimately endless growth, but one based on needs. Notably, it argues that the only way out of climate chaos is through full worker and community control of the means of production and reproduction, of the factories, the farms, the lands, the roads. We need to plan our way down to a zero-carbon economy so that without needing to constantly work in order to live or to have, we can actually start being. As I explained in the beginning of this video, the channel is on a financial downturn, so please consider supporting Our Changing Climate on Patreon if you have the means. This helps Our Changing Climate continue to be a non-AI, independent, anti-capitalist channel that is free for everyone. And if you can't spare the $3 or $6 a month right now, no worries, just liking, commenting below, or even sharing this video with a friend is more than enough to bring this video to new audiences. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and thank you for your endless support, and I'll see you next month.